All right, guys, so earlier this week, I was at the premiere here in Hollywood, Los Angeles for the No Safe Spaces documentary. This is a movie that's been about 2.5 years in the works by two buddies of mine, Dennis Prager, who's obviously been on this show many times, and I've been on his radio show a gajillion times and done some videos for PragerU, and Adam Carolla, who's also been on this show, and I've been on his show a bunch of times. The premise of the movie all started about 3 or 4 years ago when, as I know you guys are well aware, a lot of this campus craziness started. And I'm not just talking about protests, but all the things that you guys know about. I'm talking about riots and attacking police officers and destroying public property and stopping speakers from coming to campus, or literally locking speakers in rooms, or attacking professors, or deplatforming people, or a series of the other things that I've been talking about on this show for a while. So the movie, after about 2 years in the works, finally debuted here in Los Angeles. I'll pimp it out again later, but you can go to nosafespaces.com to find out where the movie's premiering in your city, or hopefully close by you guys. They're still working on getting wide release, but in the first theater that they premiered in, it already had, I think, the second highest gross returns for a documentary of all time, after Michael Moore's Sicko. Anyway, so I saw it this week, and there were a bunch of people at the red carpet premiere. A lot of my crew was there, from Ben Shapiro and Larry Elder, and just a series, a bunch of guys. Andrew Klavan was there, and Kurt Schlichter, and a whole bunch of people. But the movie itself, and this is why I'm doing the video, the movie was spectacular. It really was like watching sort of all of the things that I've been talking about in this room for the last couple of years, sort of all kind of pieced together. So the movie talks about the Bret Weinstein, Heather Heying debacle, basically at Evergreen State, that I know you guys are well aware about, where they basically protested a day where white people would not be allowed to come to campus, which was a flip on a tradition that they had at Evergreen for many years, where one day a year black students would not come to campus to protest what they believed to be perceived racism, or racism of the past. Bret never had a problem with that. Heather never had a problem with that in the past, but this year, to tell students that they couldn't come to school because of the color of their skin, they did feel that was racist, and of course it is. And they basically got chased off campus. Bret and Heather both lost their, in effect, what were tenured positions, and they had to settle with the school for $500,000, which sounds like a lot of money, right? Everyone would love 500 grand, but that's for two professional people with children who had tenured positions at a school. So it talks about that. It talks about the Jordan Peterson story, fighting Bill C-17 in Canada about the trans pronouns. It talks about Lindsay Shepard, who's been on the show, who was the student at Wilfrid Laurier University, who all she did was, in a class, show a video of Jordan Peterson, and she was taken in by the diversity crew, or whatever you want to call it, the diversity department at the university, and basically lambasted, and how she and Jordan ended up in lawsuits with the university. They talk about the $600,000 that it took to secure Berkeley University so that the very scary Ben Shapiro could speak there. And they go on the ground, and they show you footage on the ground, and they do some fun animated things, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But it was really interesting to me because, you know, now it's a little bit over 4 years that I've been doing this version of the Rubin Report. It was really in September of 2015 when I started doing this show as a long-form interview show, and I'm sure many of you guys remember that original interview with Sam Harris. And it was just like, wow, so many of the people that I have talked to in this room have been going through this, and you know, I've been through versions of this. About 3 years ago, I spoke at UCLA with Milo Yiannopoulos. It feels like a lifetime ago already. And you know, students outside were throwing things, and they created a human chain so none of us could get in. They created it was a human wall, in effect. So I guess they're not really against walls. They just don't like Trump's wall. But you know, they were pulling fire alarms, and there were bomb threats. and students screaming and all of these things. And it was interesting because Milo even said to me in the midst of the whole thing, he's like, you know, if the protesters really weren't here, I guess I wouldn't be here either. But there's so many interesting things. Bret makes a really great point about this at the end of the movie, and I don't want to give away too much because I really do hope you guys will see it because it felt important. It was important and edgy and real, and it's also funny at times. But Bret makes a really interesting point that, you know, it seems like, oh, it's like these academics and the YouTube crew, they're so focused on the college students, and why are you focusing on 18, 19, 21-year-olds? And it's like there's actually a reason for that. And the reason for that is that these kids that are in school now, and they are kids in effect, these are kids who go to a school to learn from adults, right? They've sort of removed all the adults from the equation, where now administrators and college staff and professors are cowed into silence. And there's many examples that they show this in the movie. And the problem is that in the place where students are supposed to learn the most, that is supposed to be the reverse of a safe space, right? You're supposed to go to college, you have a sort of limited set of ideas that you've learned as a young person and that you've learned through high school and whatever your family has taught you, whatever your ethnic background is or religious beliefs or a-religious beliefs, whatever they are. You go to college and then you're supposed to learn a wide variety of things. You're supposed to be hit with new ideas. You're supposed to be smacked with things that will challenge you and all of those things. And what's happened is, as we've removed that from the equation and we've said to people, you're not going to be offended here, you're not going to be challenged here, all of those things, what do you think you're really doing? I mean, for the people, this is a perfect example of the phrase that I say all too often, which is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Like, so I believe that the people who set up safe spaces, the people who instigate trigger warnings, meaning that if you walk into a class, there will actually be a sign outside of the class, and the sign will say, you might hear something about violence or about gender or some other scary topic. You might hear some version of these things, and that you should just watch out before you sit down. But the more that we do this, the more that we give these kids spaces where they'll never be challenged, the more that we warn them about potentially things that might offend them, what do you think you're doing to these kids? You're actually whacking them in the knees. You're hitting them in the knees with a baseball bat before you send them out to the world, because then they get out to the world, and the world is a messed up, scary place where you have to fight for yours. And you have to be ready to engage with people who are different than you and all of those things. So I just really felt like the movie was such a beautiful mosaic of the things, not only that I care about and talk about, but of so many of the people who I love and admire who have been here that I've had important conversations with. And I hope you guys will check it out. And, you know, I can tell you, as someone even now that, you know, I speak at college campuses probably 4 or 5 times a month. I'm actually, as we tape this right now, I'm heading out to Sacramento State tonight. It's like I find most of the students that come to my events, now I get it, it's a selected group of people, right? Because if you basically like me, you're sort of relatively open-minded, you're willing to talk about, you know, the differences that we may have on important issues like abortion or on taxes or whatever it might be, and you're willing to agree to disagree. But I find, just in the last couple weeks, I did High Point University, I did Liberty University, and what I found is that most students, they don't want to be treated like children. Now, again, it's a self-selected group that comes to my thing, so maybe the students that are outside of that, they really do, but it's really not for the students to decide. We need more adults in the room, and that's what the movie's about. One of the scariest things that they point out in the movie is that right now, polls show, I think it was a Pew poll that they referenced, that over 50% of college students believe that free speech shouldn't include hate speech, which the statement itself doesn't even make sense because A, the Supreme Court has said there's no such thing as hate speech. We have very limited protections around speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater, you can't incite to violence. But hate speech, anything could be defined as hate speech. Hate speech is an amorphous term that anyone can use to say anything about anybody. So it'll be like, someone will be like, oh, you can't use hate speech, but you're a Nazi. Well, isn't that hate speech? I mean, we create this really weird system of pressures that doesn't really make sense. But the idea that young people think that there should be hate speech laws and that free speech, that the First Amendment in effect shouldn't protect against hate speech, that's exactly what the First Amendment is for. We've got the document, we've got the #1 amendment in the Bill of Rights that enshrines our ability to battle it all out so that we're not killing each other on the streets. And that's what we've done here in America better than anywhere else. So if any of this makes any sense to you, check out the movie. I normally don't do a promo like this. I'm also in it. I'm pretty good, if I do say so myself. But there's liberals in it, there's conservatives in it, there's libertarians, there's academics, there's comedians. It's really, really great. Check out No Safe Spaces, freespeech.com. If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about free speech instead of nonstop yelling, check out our free speech playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, check out our full episode playlist. They're all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.